Yes,
okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Fatima. I work at Coin Street Nursery, which is on the South Bank in central London. Technically, I'm the deputy head of early years, but it's only technically.
So Fatima's our PVI hub partner. So she's created this element of the training that has obviously come from the intel of the PVI sector and what we thought that PVIs would really benefit from. So I'm glad that you've all come. We aim to be finished at 1:45, but obviously we're starting a little bit late, so we might run a little bit over. I am going to be sharing my screen, so you won't really see my face, Fatima. I'm going to put myself on mute, but maybe let me see if I can share my screen first.
Okay.
And then we can see what's going on. So give me a minute, everybody. Can you see my screen, Fatima?
Yes, I can.
Okay, let me do from the beginning. Can you see?
Yes, I can see.
Fabulous. Right, off you go, Fatima.
So off we go. So this webinar is called The Art of Listening, and it's the voice of the child in the baby room. So next screen, please.
Done a minute. It's not moving. You see, it happens to us all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Ah, have I skipped?
No, that's right. That's the next.
Is that okay? All right then.
So the voice of the child is sort of enshrined within the rights of the child, and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the 1989 Convention on the Rights of the Child, is an international human rights treaty that sets out the human rights which apply to all children from birth to 18, and that is the United Nations right. And to understand the significance and the importance of the voice of the child, we need to consider the rights of the child, because the voice of the child is all embedded within that. So, next screen, please. So essentially, we all have human rights. We're human, we have human rights, but children are considered to have special human rights. They have human rights too, but because of birth to 18 is such a significant time in children's lives, and if you just think about birth to 5, if you think how much we change, we have this helpless baby and we go through all these stages of the rapid development that we get up to 5, being able to sit, being able to stand, starting to talk, starting to find themselves, starting to ask questions, developing their social and emotional development, their physical development. If you think about that whole development from birth right up to 18, where they become that fully independent adult, you can see why the rights of the child would be considered special in terms of human rights. So in this time, when we're talking about the specific rights, they are properly, we have to ensure that they're properly protected, they're nurtured and increasingly empowered according to their evolving capability. And so child rights are a subset of human rights. And we do need to consider the bigger picture of child rights, because we can't consider the nitty-gritty of it unless we consider why we have child rights and how the voice of the child sits within that. Could we do the next one, please? So the Convention is the only treaty which specifically is designed for children to ensure their rights will be met as independent citizens. It exists for the provision, protection and participation of every child, regardless of their wealth, their gender, their ethnicity, their religion, the location where they live in the world, ability, disability, cognitive ability, any other factor. The bit that obviously is of particular interest to us here is the participation of every child, and how you get the participation and why it's important that every child is able to participate. So the next slide, please. So the voice of the child within the Convention of the Rights of the Child comes into 2 of the articles. Article 12, respect for the views of the child. Every child has the right to express their views, feelings and wishes, and to have their views considered and taken seriously. And Article 13 is the freedom of expression. Every child must be free to express their thoughts and their opinions. And when we're talking about express, we don't necessarily mean verbal, because if you think about a very small baby, they're not going to be verbally telling you, I don't like this, or I need changing. So we're talking about when we express, we have to think about all the different ways children can express. But within the rights of the child, children have a right to express their views, their opinions, their feelings, and they must be free. They shouldn't be repressed or prevented from expressing how they feel and what their thoughts are. Next slide, please. So, what's the voice of the child? It's a general term, and it's used to show how we create meaningful engagement with children. But as I just said, it doesn't necessarily mean spoken language. And if you think in our age group, or if you're thinking about in the baby room, the under twos, it's very unlikely to mean spoken language. So you've probably heard of the 100 languages of children. It's a metaphor for all the way children communicate, show their understanding, their learning and their thinking. So this 100 languages of children comes from the Reggio Emilia approach, which was developed after the Second World War, founded by Loris Magaguzzi with the help of local parents. So if you think about what happened in Italy during the Second World War and the devastation and the rebuilding of what happened in Italy after the Second World War, what parents wanted was childcare that fostered critical thinking and collaboration. They opened their first nursery in 1963, and it has a child-centred approach which is based on that belief of 100 languages that children use to express themselves. And when we're talking about the languages, we're talking about gestures, facial expressions, non-verbal communication, painting, dancing, drawing, singing, anything you can think of is a language of a child. Any way a child will express what they're feeling or what they want to say is a language of the child. A baby on the floor kicking their legs up and down just because they can do it and they're happy. There you go. That's a language of the child. And what's important is that all children, regardless of how they communicate, regardless of their cognitive ability, have something to communicate. We just have to listen. They will communicate. But if we're not listening, they won't communicate. This is the issue. This is the crux. We must listen when a child is communicating, whatever they're communicating. Next screen, please. So why is it important that we give children a voice? Well, it promotes their self-esteem and their self-worth, because if they communicate to us and we take that seriously, they think themselves, oh yeah, it's important what I say. If I say it again, you will take notice of me. And self-esteem is really, really important. It's part of your self-confidence. It's part of your willingness to engage in the world. It's part of your willingness to contribute new ideas, to express opinions, to be yourself and to develop your own opinions without fear. It gives us an insight into the child's perspective, because although we might think we know what the child's perspective is, it's actually from our perspective. We're saying, well, that's what we think, but do we really know? So it's really important that the communication with the child, it tells us something about them and what they think and what they feel. It allows us to fully engage with the child, because if we're taking into account a child's perspective, a child's view, a child's opinion, we are engaging with them, and it becomes a two-way thing, and it will change what we think, because it's not solely our opinion. And it shows we value their contribution. Oh, that's okay. It shows we value their contribution, their views, their wishes, their feelings. And we value their communication. We value the contribution. Most importantly of all, it allows the child to share the story of their lived experiences. Because if we don't take account of a child's lived experiences, all we're doing is imposing what we think on them. And children can contribute their own lived experience, can tell you about it. And as I said, we are talking about the 100 languages which we have to listen to and we have to understand. And when we're talking about a children's voice, we're talking about understanding their feelings, their emotions, their wishes, their opinions. We're not talking about, can they add 2 and 2 together? Can they mix 2 colours of paint? Can they do a bit of mark making? We can see that. We are talking about those children telling us how they feel about things. And this is why the children's voice is really, really important. Next one, please. So how about where does this all sit within legislation and guidance? Well, the Children's Act of 2004 describes the need to promote children's needs as having paramount importance. That's a quote, paramount important. But how do we promote their needs if we don't know what they are? This is the child's voice. We find out what their needs are from them. It's no good us saying that child needs that. Actually, we've got no idea. We are saying a child needs that. We are saying this is what we think. Might not be what the child thinks. So you can see that within the Children's Act, we are required to take account of children only, and we get at that through their voice, however they're expressing that voice. Next one, please. So what about in the EYFS? If we go back to the overarching principles, the fundamental principles of the EYFS, you can see that children's voice is really embedded within this. The unique child. Every child has a capacity to learn. Every child is learning all the time. And we need to take account of that. We need to take account of what they think, what they do. We must recognise that unique child. Part of that unique child is us understanding their needs and their wants and their wishes and us responding to those things. So that's in the unique child. The positive relationships, the relationships people have with the child. Now in nursery, that's largely going to be the key person. But the key person is the person that should know the child the best. The person who should be looking to think about next steps and looking to be thinking about what does the child need and what do they want. But that boils down to the relationship between the child and the key person and how the key person understands the child. What have they understood? How have they communicated? How have they engaged? You put those two together to help create the enabling environment. So you know what the child's needs are, you know what they want, you know what they like. You have your key person who knows the child best, can interpret these 100 languages of the child, and you will create an enabling environment to meet those needs, to do what the child likes. And from that, you'll get learning and development. So the voice of the child is really embedded in the EYFS. And the underlying principles, which you therefore see all around the EYFS, is about that voice of that child and those relationships that children have with their important people in their life to enable them to learn and develop, which is really what the voice of the child is all about. Next, please. So what about Ofsted? What does Ofsted say? So, from the inspection framework of September last year, Ofsted says integral to teaching is how practitioners assess what children know, understand, and can do, as well as taking account of their interests and dispositions to learn, and how practitioners use this information to plan children's next steps in learning. So, how do practitioners assess how do they assess what a child knows, understands, and can do? But we can observe some things, but do we really know what they know and what they understand? And this is what we do through our 100 languages. We don't only use what we can see to make these assessments. We have to engage with the child. We have to know what the child knows, what they understand, what they can do, what they like, what their dispositions are for learning. This is part of the engagement with the child. This is part of the child's voice. So you can see across the Children's Act, across the EYFS, and what Ofsted are looking for, and what Ofsted want us to do in our settings. You can see it's embedded everywhere, and it's really, really important. And it's so important, it's paramount. Next slide, please. So listening. What is listening? So this is a quote from Tolfie and Woodhead. And it's more than that, it's 25 years old. Listening must not wait until children are able to join in adult conversations. It should begin at birth and be adapted to their developing capacities for communication and participation in the social world. So you're not waiting for a child to speak. You're not waiting for a child to have the confidence to join in. You start from the beginning, back to the 100 languages of children. You start from the beginning, you support them, you look at their communications and you understand them. In early years settings, it's really important that we have an ethos for listening to children, where the whole setting creates a respectful community for children to feel they're listened to and that they're understood. Initially, that's going to be the key person. The key person will know their child and all of their children. They're the ones that will know the best. They're the ones that have the relationship with the family. These are the ones, this is your starting point. But actually, everybody in that setting should be listening to all the children. Whether you know that children well enough or you more than another child or not, everybody should accept and understand that children need to communicate, that they can communicate, they have the capacity and the ability to communicate. And if a child is going to feel listened to and feel understood, it's really important that they can be listened to and understood by everyone. So that is on us as a setting, as the adults in the setting, to make sure that we have an environment, we have an ethos where listening to children is really, really important. The other important thing is that listening and consulting is not a one-off activity. It's not one day you say, I'm going to listen to the children today, and then the next day you just ignore it all, or you go on and carry on, however you're doing. It's ongoing. It should be happening all of the time, in every situation, when you're changing a nappy, when you're putting them to sleep, when they're waking up, when they're throwing their food on the floor at lunchtime. All of these things, these are all opportunities for listening and consulting with the children. And it's really important that along with the ethos, a part of that ethos is that it's an ongoing activity, that we do it all of the time. And it's important for practitioners to tune in, to listen with all of their senses to enable them to hear the voice of the child. And I really mean all of their senses, because if you think, for example, you can smell something, but a baby's not telling you, oh, hang on a minute, my nappy needs changing. You know that. There's your sense of smell. You know that. You don't need to be told. So you use this all the time. You listen already. This is not something new. This is not something you do or you don't do. You do it already. You need to come into a mindset to realise that you are listening to the children. Next one, please. So, how can we listen to these 100 voices in the baby room? So there's an approach called the Mosaic approach to listening, and it was developed by Alison Clark and Peter Moss. And it takes the view that young children, there's a lot of work being done with the Mosaic approach in under twos, and there's a lot been done in early years in general. And it takes the view that children are experts in their own lives. So if a child indicates, shows, tells you they don't like something, we should actually respect that, because they know what they like and what they don't like. If a child pushes a plate away because they've finished eating, we potentially can encourage them to eat, but we can't force them to eat. If they're full up, they're full up. They're an expert in this. Children are experts in their own lives. They're experts about their own feelings. They're experts about their own emotions. And they are very skillful communicators. Remember, they've got 100 languages, even more. They're very, very skillful. They have rights. They have the right to be listened to. They have the right to express their views however they choose to. And they make meaning out of situations. And these are really, really important things when we're thinking about listening, that we acknowledge that these children have something to say. They can say something, and they are experts in how they live their lives. The Mosaic approach acknowledges children as beings, not becomings. They are themselves in that time and that space. We're not doing what we're doing because in 20 years' time they're going to go to work in a bank. We're not thinking about that. We're not preparing them to be something else. We're supporting them to be and to develop where they are now, from where they are now. They are individual human beings in their own right, in that time and space. We're not doing things and not helping them just because they're going to become something else. In other words, we are recognising the rights of the child to be looked after, to be taken care of, but the rights of the child to be a child. And that's a really powerful underlining fact of the mosaic approach. Next one, please. So the nitty-gritty of the mosaic approach for listening is it uses lots of different methods. It's called mosaic because, like a mosaic, it's got lots of little bits that you join together to make a big picture. That's why it's called the mosaic approach. And when we talk about methods because it did come out of a research study, but whereas this is not a scientific study, this is a study in, if you like, this is a way of accessing everyday life, about finding information you won't find any other way. So when we talk about methods, we're just talking about ways of doing things. So it uses lots of different ways to get the bits of the mosaic. It's reflexive, and the children, the parents, the practitioners reflect on what they found and what they mean. And what does that mean for the child? It's very, very adaptable. It's very flexible. It's very creative. You can do almost any way to get another little piece of information. And it focuses on the children's lived experience. Children speak to adults through their play, their actions, and their reactions. The mosaic approach combines everything together to make a bigger picture. It's the mosaic of little pieces into a bigger picture. And I think sometimes we do this already. Absolutely, we do this already in the early years and in the baby room, especially, I think. But sometimes we forget to look at all the little pieces together. And sometimes someone has one little piece and they don't say anything and you don't know. And sometimes people hold on to information which would have made a difference or could have given us a different perspective of the child. So it's important that we try to fit those bits of the mosaic to make that bigger picture. Next slide, please. So how do we do this? How do we get to the ways, how do we get children's creative and physical engagement with the world? And how can we show both the verbal and non-verbal ways? So it's a lot of different methods that we can use at different stages of development. So next page, please. So if you think in the baby room, we have everything from, depending on your setting, in our setting here, we take babies from 6 months and they go to 2. Or some nurseries have younger, they go from 3 months. So you think about the capabilities and capacity of a 6-month-old compared to a child who is just about to move into the toddler room. There's a massive difference. The development is phenomenal. So you need to think about all sorts of different ways, because these children who are just about to touch 2 can tell you. They can verbally tell you what they like and what they don't like. They can tell you opinions. You might not like to hear those opinions, but they can definitely tell you. But the babies down here of 3 months and 6 months, they're using the 100 languages. So it's really important that we, even for the children who are verbal, it's important to think about all the ways we can use. So observation, we are really skilled in observation. We all of us are. We have to be in early years. So we're really, really skilled. But quite often, what we're looking for when we're doing our observations is what the child can do, what does the child like to do, what we're going to do next. Tip it around a bit. If you're going to use this approach and you're doing an observation, you need to think, ask yourself these questions. Put yourself in the child's place and say, what's it like for me to be here? What's the child telling you? The child will tell you all sorts of things. The child will tell you if it's a good day, if it's a bad day. They will tell you if they've had a bad night. They might be a bit clingy. Who knows? But this day they're clingy. I want to be held. So what's it like for me to be here? And most importantly, do you listen to me? I can't walk past the baby room if a baby's crying without picking them up. I just can't. It's just not within me to do that. But sometimes I will have people saying, don't pick the child up. And I'm saying, why not? Why not? It's crying. And they'll say, because she just wants to be picked up all the time, because at home she's held all the time. In my mind, this child is crying. It may just be because she's having a little bit of a temper tantrum. Who knows? But she needs comfort. So my listening is I'm saying, you're saying you want to be held, so I'll do it. So what's it? Are you listening to me? It's all very well knowing things, but Do you listen to them? Do you do anything about it? What are they telling you? As they get a little bit older, within our frame of the baby room, and all children, you can do this for actually any age of child. Just do the observation, because you will see all sorts of things. If you're thinking about what's it like for me to be here, and are you listening to me, you can see all sorts of any age. As they get a little bit older, you could potentially use a camera, the silent voice of the camera. So you could, you could use disposable cameras, which I think you can still get, or you could, I know that some children actually are quite skilled at using cameras on phones, so you could show them if you've got an iPad or a tablet, or you could say to them, what pictures shall I take? The truth is, children will only take pictures or ask you to take pictures of things which interest them, which hold some mystery to them, which are important to them. So a camera is a really, really good tool, and actually can really surprise you in what they want to photograph. I know when I've done this and I've supported other practitioners to apply this approach in the nursery. Children have taken really odd pictures, and you think they're really odd, but to the child, they're not odd at all. They mean something. You can go on a tour of the nursery, take a child, let the child lead you, take you around the nursery. You take note of where they go, what they see, where they don't go, where they linger, because just like taking pictures, the tour will take them to really, really important places in the nursery, in the baby room or in the bigger nursery. They'll only take you to places which are interesting or curious or meaningful to them. And try it, because you'll really see it's a real eye-opener. It's an absolute eye-opener about where they go and what they're interested in, what they're curious about. Things you probably wouldn't have thought, however well you think you know the child. That's a really good one, particularly for those, well, they don't necessarily to be verbal, but they'll take you, I would say, from quite young. If they're walking, it's easier because they will be able to lead it, but you'd be surprised at the outcome of that one. Next page, please. So child conferencing. This is a really interesting one. It works really well with the 2-year-olds, but actually even for your under 2s. So you can ask them questions about nursery. What do you like about nursery? Now, you might just get something like Teddy. Well, they like the Teddy. If they're in the one word, they will understand you, but you've got to make sure they're simple and age-appropriate questions. And for those that are kind of like more or less up touching the 2-year-old end, what do adults do in the nursery? And that is so enlightening. So enlightening. As I said, I've done this previously, and we had children saying, what do adults do? Sit down. They tell you to sit down. Don't run. What's coming over to the children, the overwhelming things that come over to the children, are things which are repetitive, of which probably the practitioners don't necessarily realise they're doing. And that gave the practitioners, in the last time I did this, really something to think about. They were thinking, whoa, am I saying that often? And they had to change the way they were approaching the children. They had to change this way so that the children were focusing on other things, not just sit down or don't run. Interview is another technique you could use between staff and parents about their perception of their child's experience in nursery. I have to say that the staff found this particularly interesting, because they said to me afterwards, never asked parents these kind of questions. So, for example, what's a good day in nursery for your child? Never asked that question before, never thought to ask that question before. What does your child like about nursery? Never thought to ask that question before. And I suppose because when we exchange information at the end of the day, we're talking about, what they've eaten, how many times they've been changed, how they slept, what they've done. You're not talking about these potentially tangible things that you've seen. You're not talking about their opinions or their feelings or their emotions. And actually, you're not asking the parents for their perspective on nursery. They just want to know that if they arrive in the morning and they're a bit off colour, this is the information parents impart. They don't impart other things, or they might do sometimes. but in general they don't. So it's really enlightening, really enlightening, asking parents about their perception of their child's experience in nursery. Maps. Now, I contend that you can make maps. So you've got children who have taken some photos or had you take photos. You've had children who've gone on a tour around the nursery. You can combine that. Obviously, it's going to be a potential. Well, I'm going to say it's an adult there because you're going to get the children together. But where do the children put the toys? Where do they want bits on the toys on their map to go? Or the things they've taken photos, they might have taken the sand or the water. Where do they want this to go? They make the map, you stick it down. And in this way, you're also talking, you're using their 100 languages, but you're showing them, and their expressions are showing you how important these things are, or they're not. And it's the not bit that's the really important bit. These are only suggestions, these methods, they're only suggestions. You can be as creative as you like. But from each one of these things that I've just described here, which I think is 6 things, from these 6 things, you will get a little bit of information about a child. Children are going to be with you like 5 minutes, 2 minutes. For the babies, they're very young. You're not going to be doing this for half an hour. You're going to have 10 minutes, 5 minutes. You're going to get little snippets of information. What are you going to do with those bits of information? How are you going to make all the little bits that you've got into your bigger picture? Because hopefully, by looking at their 100 languages, you're going to get conflicting ideas. You're going to think, I hope also you're going to get your own questions. Well, didn't know about that. What can I do about that? Next slide, please. So now you can sit and have a conversation with your colleagues. You don't need to put anything on paper. You can just have this conversation. Well, this is what I've learned about this child. What are we going to do about this? You're trying to understand the child, but also in this whole process, hopefully you'll be able to identify what that child is not doing or what's missing from that, or how you can support that child. You also have to recognise that unexpected things will come up because children have priorities and concerns of their own. And you may need to use all of the information that you get to improve and develop your provision. Change it if necessary. So you can have that conversation, or you could do it a little bit more formally if you've got the time and the energy. Next slide, please. Here. So this is a compilation grid. And I'm saying, you could do it if you wanted to, but you put the child's name down on the left-hand side, and across the top, any method that you used, you put a brief note in there for each child. Now, it's doubtful that every child is going to have a box filled, and that doesn't matter because you'll get some information about each different child. You can then decide, you can then talk together, and you put in your mosaic together, and you can see what you understand about this child. You can see what you don't understand about this child and what you're going to do. But the parents' impressions on top of that gives you a really good picture of what life is like in your nursery. And that is really the purpose of the child's voice. What is life like in your nursery? Next one, please. So, suggested questions for child conference or interview or chat, whatever you want to call it. And it doesn't have to be a sit-down thing. You could be walking around the nursery, you could be changing a nappy, you could be running around in the garden, and someone where you just stop. It doesn't have to be, it's not a formalised thing, it can be done any way you like. What do you like best in nursery? What don't you like about nursery? Who are your favourite people? What do the adults do? What's your favourite place? Any questions? If you want to find out particular information, if you want to find out what they like for lunch the best, you can ask that. What's the best thing for lunch? You fix this, you set it, things will throw up that you want to know about. Or you already may think, we want to develop this part of our provision. What do the children think? You could lean all your questions, you could lean all your observations towards that. If your observation shows an underused part of the provision, you could lean all your questions and your mosaic towards that. It doesn't have to be a whole nursery thing, it could be a little bit. We want to improve our book corner. Investigate that. Who's in that book corner? What are they doing in that book corner? Which you'll find through observation, which you'll talk to the children about their favourite books, all of these kind of things. So it's really, really flexible. Next slide, please. With regards to the parent interview questions, lots of parents won't have the time, won't be inclined, but you will, I guarantee, get a few. And really, you don't need a huge amount. It gives you a bit of information about that child, but actually could give you much more information than you think about a lot of children. What do you think, whoever, Child Z, feels about being at nursery? What would be a good day at home? What do you think would be a good day at nursery? What do you think would be a bad day at nursery? It's their opinions. It's not shaped by what you think or anything else. It's their opinion, and it's information for you to use. It's a tile in the mosaic, a little bit of your mosaic to focus your attention if you're trying to develop one area, you want a generalized picture, whatever you want. But whatever you're doing, the voice of the child is really important. Their feelings, their emotions, their opinions are important. They count, they matter. And if you take into account those feelings, those emotions and your opinions, you will improve your provision, I say without doubt, because you should at the end of it have more engaged children. So that's me done. Has anyone got any questions?
Hi, Fatima.
Hello.
Yeah, just a quick one regarding this listening to the voice of these children, which I really appreciate and I'm happy about. But my question is, you have more than one baby you're working with, maybe 2 or 3 babies you're working with, and they all, one particular one always want the attention, and the other ones too are there. You want to listen to all of them. And this particular one is always crying. Maybe that's the way of expressing what you want. Yeah. So, and in a situation like this, what happens? Just because I'm asking these questions to get more ideas about what to do to make sure you are listening to the child.
Okay, so I mean, I wouldn't expect you to listen to lots, or nobody could listen to several children in one go. But if you've got a pretty dominant child who's expressing their opinions there, clearly they are crying because they want attention, they're unhappy, they're not well. Are they newly settling, so they're separating? And you know, if it's a child that's just settling, some children take longer than others. So very often when you've got a child like this, you need to use distraction techniques, don't you? But you know that. So what you need to work out is what is the best thing to distract that child. If this child wants to be held, you can, in that process, you could, you know, sit on the floor with your child on one knee and be engaging with other children. You need to work out, you need to look, everything's going on for that child to work out how you can distract them. What are they trying to say to you? Are they just saying, actually, I just want my mummy? Or are they saying, actually, I'm a bit bored because I haven't got anything to do? So you need to try and work out what that crying is about by looking, observe this child and see what they're doing or what they're not doing. In my experience, or every child, even children that cry for very many weeks, and very often that could be special needs children, every child will eventually settle. They seem to accept their situation and they do settle. So what I can say is you need to find your distraction techniques. You need to find out what works for this child, because we've all of us got this range where we think we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, but what's right for that child? So I'm assuming she doesn't cry for 6, 8, 10 hours that she's in nursery, does she?
Oh, the thing is, every time this child wants attention, every time, all the time, he wants to be picked up, he wants to be there, and there are other children who also need it. So I'm just looking at this child. You don't want to ignore the child which is far away. You want to make sure that the child is happy. You listen to the child, you're working with the child. So that is why I'm asking this question.
Yes, of course. So we might need to look a bit broader than this and attachment. I mean, do we know what the relationship with the child and their parents is? And actually, have you asked the parents at home what they do? Have you said, What happens at home when your child doesn't want to be put down? What do you do? So talk to the parents. There's no shame in saying this child's crying. I know lots of people don't like to say to parents, oh, your child cried all day. But the reality is some do. And we need to work cooperatively with the parents. We need to see what the parents would do to try and move the child on. And it may be that the child has to be put down for a minute and then you'd be picked up again. And we extend that time gradually. That may be what you'll need to do. But you need to know, how can you distract that child? So what are the things that will distract that child? What do the parents do at home? And ensure that you obviously you've got to treat the other children as you see it fairly, because they need your time and attention. But children, in the end, they stop. They don't just carry on and on. They don't carry on till they're 18 crying because they're not with their mother. What else is going on for that child? What else is, besides that crying, what else is going on for that child? What's happening at home? What do the parents do? How do they manage that? What kind of relationship do you think they have? From the bits of the interactions that you see, what kind of relationship is there going on with the parents? The child is crying for a reason, and the reason just could be, I demand to be picked up because I don't want to be left by myself. And some babies are like that, and it is testing for you, and I'm not saying it isn't. Try observing, try looking beyond just that moment of the crying. What happened before? What happens when they stop? Try and sort of like piece your puzzle together in that way.
Oh, thank you. But this child is with the parent. You talk to the parent, and it looks like each time, all the time, that is what is happening at home. The child is being picked up by that one, all of it. So the child has really enjoyed that, is enjoying it. And so when the child comes, wants to go through that, there are people there to help the child, to do that for the child, but it's not the same when the child is away from home. And that's the strategy.
Because Rama is a childminder as well, Fatima.
Okay.
Yeah, when you're a lone childminder, it's quite tricky, isn't it, Rama, when you're trying to deal with other children and you've got somebody that's crying and there's no, you can't use another adult as a distraction tactic.
Yeah.
Challenging.
Well, yeah, of course it's challenging. I mean, you are just going to have to. There are times when you're just going to have to put the child down, and I mean, put them for like a couple of minutes, and then pick them up, and put them back down after a few minutes, and just kind of like extend that period of time, because they will eventually stop crying. I know that's testing for you, and it's testing for your other children. I don't know that at all, but some babies are like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, I don't think that's very
helpful. And I would also say I'm chipping in here. That obviously we don't know, and Fatima mentioned this, is this a new child? How long have you had this child for? When you took the child in, was there that sharing of information where, you know, you go into every nitty gritty about that child's routine and, you know, their favorite songs, if they've got a special toy that they really like when they get upset. When my partner had a child who was like heartbroken on the first day in his care, he discovered that if he turned on the extractor fan on the oven, that would work, and that he only knew that trick because of our youngest son, and the trick worked for him. And then it's like you develop this repertoire of tricks you to just stop the crying for a little bit. But I think it's getting to the bottom of if it's the fact that the child just is used to being picked up all the time, it's, you know, having that nice conversation with the parent that, you know, that might work in a home setting, but in a setting with many different children, that can be, you know, the child's not unhappy, he's not hungry, he doesn't have a dirty bottom, you know, there's no given reason that you know of that he is crying, but they do need to have the same technique as you, or else it's going to make your life really hard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks a lot.
You've got lots of people from nurseries. I don't know whether anybody from the nurseries wants to chip in with a question before we have to go. It is 51, so I'm mindful that you probably don't have that much capacity to be out of the room. Does anybody?
Hi.
Oh, hi, someone just.
Hi. I'm Ferba Daniels from Gifted Hands Nursery.
Hiya.
Hi. I'm working in the baby room. So actually not far from the subject that Rama asking just now. So we have the particular one as well, one child. Especially it's with me. So if I'm in the room, that child started crying and want me to carry. I don't want to say him or her. All right. But when I leave the room, that child is happy playing, happily. But suddenly when he heard my voice, straight away started crying again and want to be hold all the time. So I play with the child, but just like hold me tight, like I'm going. So I said, I'm not leaving the room. I'm playing with you. I'm just changing nappy, your friend. Sometimes I take that child to the nappy changing area. See, this is what Ferba doing. Ferba is changing nappy, and Ferba will be back to the room. But it doesn't work.
No. Well, so this is really common. It's really, really common. I mean, for example, we can be in the nursery office and all of a sudden this baby's cry, and I'll go and say, well, what's wrong? And they'll say, Neil's gone for lunch. Exactly what you're saying. Well, no, that's the difference. That's actually not quite the right story, but when you have exactly 100% what you're saying, I recognize this over and over again. The child wants you because they're more familiar with you, they're more attached to you, and because they want you, because they want you, they want your time, they want your attention. When you're not there, they're fine. They're absolutely fine. They'll get on with it. So a lot about it is that when you want to come out and do nappies, don't let them hear your voice. Eventually they will stop doing that and they will recognize that there are other people around, that there are other children around that they can play. And if you think on a day you're not there, that child isn't crying all day long. That child's getting on with it. And this is just about this relationship between you and the child recognizing and understanding can't have 100% of your time and attention.
Yeah. It's like I'm trying my best. Sometimes the staff said like, well, but it's so nice when you are not here. We didn't hear this child cry.
No, but everybody has to, you've got to share. I mean, you're fortunate, very fortunate. You're in a nursery. Grandma obviously has got to manage by herself all the time. That you're really fortunate that someone else can have that child, someone else can take that child, someone else can be. But sometimes it's about doing things where the child can't hear you, can't see you, will happily carry on, and you can get on with your jobs. Again, that child will stop and will be happy to be without you even when you're in the room. It just takes time, and it takes some children more time than others.
The child is happy when coming to the nursery and leaving, also saying goodbye, flying kiss, everything is like so happy all day. But this is the thing that like it's really like I feel like sometimes I feel sorry for the child. I said like, okay, I've spent time with you, but there's other thing that I have to do. I can't just be sitting and cuddling the child, because the child, like when you offer the toys, let's play, distract, and then the child just push the toy away. So just like want to be cuddled and facing the other side. So there's a bit like, so I'm trying my best. I wish one day it will come.
It will come. It really will come. And maybe, you just have to ignore that. Maybe have someone else for this particular day just be the one that's going to see to this child and engage. And if when they cry and you go, that you've responded, they're saying, I want you and only you. And by going over to them and entertaining them and playing with them and all the rest, they've got what they wanted. So sometimes they can't always have. So they're attached. She's clearly attached to you. That when you're not there, she'll cry. Fine. But, children have multiple attachments, and that they will get used to. Absolutely, this child will settle and get used to you. You will always be the one that they will go to. They've been bumped, or they want her, or they want a bit of comfort. But they will stop. They always do. They always do.
Thank you.
I try to give you a bit of hope. It's not going to go on forever.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Fatima? No? Well, I'm very mindful of the time. Thank you all for coming. It's been great to see some new faces, or not faces, names. Obviously, we are still running during the holiday, so please do reach out to us if you do need anything. And I think it's really great to have lots of PVIs, and obviously Rama's a childminder, but most of you are PVI settings, and it's great that you've been able to attend during this session, because I know that that's really, really hard at these times. But yeah, if you can just email us and tell us the things that you would find really helpful in terms of training that we could offer for you, that would be fantastic as well. I will follow this meeting up with Fatima's slides, so please watch out for my email, and then yeah, have